Hello and welcome to Reading Tabby. I'm Tabitha, aka Tabby Tabs, and I'm going over my July reading wrap up today. I somehow broke June's record. I know I said in my June video, there's no way I'm going to read more than 21 books in a month like I read for June. That felt like an outlier month because I really felt like I was reading for the entirety of June. But for July, I didn't feel like I was reading for the entirety of July, even though I read more books technically. And I think that's because a lot of these books are children's books or they're short stories or novellas. That is fully half of what I read is those types of books. So they're easier to read and they're quicker to read. And it's just, my time flew by this month checking those out. I'm also not going to get too in depth on a lot of these because I spoke so much at length on them in previous vlogs. I recommend checking out my Summerween vlog, checking out my elementary school rereads vlog, and my book club vlogs for details on most of these books. But I'll talk a little bit on them. I'm going to go also in order, the order that I read them this month. So the very first, from the very first book I read this month, read and finished, I should say, through the last one. And I did finish a book on the last day of the month. So I feel quite accomplished to have finished something on the first and then finished something on the last. It just feels like a nice round completeness to the month. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, I'm going to start with the very first book on my list, which is Yes, Chef by Grace Riley. Technically, I started that book, I want to say back in April. I got it as an ARC off of NetGalley. An ARC is an advanced reader's copy if you're unfamiliar with that, and an ALC is an advanced listening copy. That's if you get an advanced copy of the audiobook. If you get an advanced copy of the book, that's an ARC. So I got an advanced copy of that, and I held off reading it because it just came out. Yes, Chef came out, I want to say, like a couple weeks ago. So I held off on reviewing it and finishing it until it was closer to the release date. But I just thought it was okay. I gave it 3 stars at the end. It was almost a 4-star book for me. At the beginning, it was closer to 2, I'll say, because I did not like the characters at the start. The 2 romantic leads were just kind of annoying, I thought. Kind of unlikable. The male romantic lead especially, he's portrayed as this asshole chef. And he has his issues and stuff. And as the book goes on, you get to know these characters. You get to know why they are the way they are. They become a lot more sympathetic, a lot more interesting. They get the depth added to it. So obviously there's character growth, which is wonderful in a novel, but a little bit of a requirement for a good novel, I think, is to have some good character growth. But then the spice started, which was all good at the start. And this is about 60% into the book is when this picks up, and I was perfectly fine with it. I was enjoying it, and then it got into baby making stuff, like the characters talking about making babies and wanting to make babies with each other, and I'm just like, pregnancy is not a thing that I enjoy reading about. I'm not into the whole making baby stuff. I'm not into having babies. I'm not into any of that when it comes to romance. My romance stories, it's just I don't find that very appealing, I guess, because pregnancy honestly terrifies me. So I like it in a horror book, like Treadwife by Saratoga Schaefer earlier this year. That was a pregnancy focused book that I absolutely loved because it was about the horrors of pregnancy. Because I find the idea of pregnancy and giving birth to be absolutely terrifying. I don't have any children, obviously, of my own, because it scares me. So having that in a romance novel is not appealing to me. And then after Yes, Chef, which I don't believe I covered in any of my vlogs, I started my Summerween reading vlog. So I read a bunch of books for my Summerween reading vlog. I read Slasher Summer by E.L. Chen, gave this 5 stars, really enjoyed it. I read Teddy Bears Never Die by Cho Yi-un. This was so different, so interesting. I gave it 4 stars instead of 5, only because the timeline can get a little confusing in this one, but I totally recommend it. It was really cool and interesting. I read The Extra by Annie Neugbauer. That one was a paranoia-inducing novella that was so enjoyable, and I gave it 4 stars just because it feels like it. I don't know that if I like the ending, even though it is kind of left up in the air as to whether the extra was discovered or not, which is a little alarming and fear-inducing at the end. But at the same time, I just felt like, I don't know, it just felt like there was something missing in it. So I only gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Absolutely loved this. Gave it 5 stars. I do have the audiobooks for all of these, for the full trilogy. But I wound up buying them. I do own the whole trilogy for my shelves now because I just know I'm going to love them. And the fungal horror, nature horror, that sort of horror is 100% up my alley, totally my jam. So this was a really good time. I gave that 5 stars. And then my last Summerween book was Natural Selection by Claire Edge, which is also an ARC. It comes out in the next couple weeks. I loved it. I thought it was so good. It was my big surprise of Summerween. I don't know that it was what I was expecting it to be, but it was a really good horror novel. It is YA. I don't know that it's straight up horror. It plays off like almost like a slasher, but there's bears attacking boys in this book essentially, and the whole town is fearful of these bear attacks. Things get locked down. Suspects start being looked at a bit more closely because people even though there are bears and people are hearing the bears, seeing the bears, there's this suspicion that the boys are maybe being led to the bears or something like that. I'm not going to give away what the truth actually is. It's a little bit loopier than that, but I really enjoyed Natural Selection. I think it was one of my favorite reads this month. It was so much fun. Then I took a little break before I jumped into my rereading my childhood favorites, and I read Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It by Brooke Averick, which I gave 3 stars because it was just a lot being in Phoebe's head. She was just kind of a lot to deal with. She's like Bridget Jones on steroids, but a bit more juvenile than Bridget Jones. Not that I've read those books, but I've seen the movies. I don't know how much they differ from the books in terms of like the tone of the character. If Bridget is at all like she is in the movie and the books, I would assume that it must be pretty close. But I think that's the tone that they were going for in Phoebe Berman. And I don't know if it was necessarily successful because it was just a lot. It was just a lot being in Phoebe's head. And she is so childish in her behavior and her thoughts and her thought patterns at times. It could be a little frustrating being in her head in that book. But that's why I gave it 3 stars. It was just okay. I don't think I talked about it in any other vlog, but I don't have a whole lot to say about it other than it was just okay. I am a little upset that I paid a credit for that on Libro FM. I actually bought the audiobook. I pre-ordered the audiobook because when I read the description, I thought for sure that this was going to be one that I was super into and I really liked, but I just thought it was okay at the end of the day. And then I did my favorite vlog of this month, which is my childhood rereads vlog. I reread so many books. Again, I recommend checking out that vlog if you want to know all my thoughts. But I read The Berenstain Bears and the Spooky Old Tree, which is a children's picture book, which I didn't count in my list because it is a picture book, so technically I read 29 books, but it has like 20 words total in it, so I didn't want to count that towards my read. But I did read that as well. And then I jumped into kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and I read 3 Boxcar Children books. I read 2 Bailey School Kid books, and I read Sideways Stories from Wayside School and Christie's Great Idea, which is the very first Babysitter's Club book. I gave them all 4 to 5 stars. I really enjoyed rereading. Rereading them was such an incredible experience for me. It really brought back so many memories, so many feelings from when I was a kid, reading these books for the first time and absolutely loving them, being obsessed with them. Because the books that I chose to reread are the books that I remember loving and rereading all the time when I was a kid. So I picked out specific Boxcar Children's. I picked out specific Bailey School kid books. I tried to pick the books that I knew that I loved. The only exception to this was when I reread Goosebumps. I read 3 Goosebumps books as well. And those were 2 that I knew I really liked or that I remembered really liking. And then one was one that I barely remembered, but turned out to be a huge surprise, and I gave that one 4 stars. That was Welcome to Camp Nightmare. I think I'd given it 4 stars already when I'd rated it on Goodreads. A few years ago, I tried rating all the Goosebumps that I'd read, trying to remember what I thought of them, which I don't think I was 100% successful in remembering accurately everything that I'd read, or all my feelings, I should say, about what I'd read, but I think I was close enough. And I did end up really liking that Welcome to Camp Nightmare. It was a surprise enjoyment for that. And then the Werewolf Fever Swamp, I actually lowered my rating. I originally gave that 5 stars. It's a very basic werewolf story. It was good. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure Kid Me loved it. But it wasn't as exciting as I remember other Goosebumps stories being. But it was still really fun. I liked that book. And then I read Black Beauty, which made me absolutely bawl. That one was I knew it was going to make me cry as well, but it's one of those stories that is just so beautiful, so heartfelt, so compassionate and lovely in its messaging about being kind to animals and to those around you, no matter what their socioeconomic level may be, whatever, if you determine that they're of a higher class than you or a lower class, that none of that makes any difference. We're all human beings at the end of the day, and we're all creatures on this planet just trying to survive and live together, and we should be kind to each other. That's the basic message of Black Beauty, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely loved that. I also read Matilda by Roald Dahl. I had to reread a Roald Dahl book because he was such a big part of my childhood. Specifically, the BFG is my favorite Roald Dahl, but that one was unavailable. And I also decided I wanted to reread Matilda because I've reread the BFG in the last few years anyways. And Matilda was one I hadn't reread in a long time, and I knew I loved that one too. So I think it was a lot more fun to reread one of his books that I hadn't reread in a long time, to get that nostalgic feeling back. And I was very successful, I think. I also reread, I didn't put it in here either, because it feels a little silly. It's not like, oh, I guess technically I read the whole book, but I read Welcome to the Wicked Wax Museum, which is a Goosebumps book as well. It's a choose your own scare book. So as you're reading through it, you're reading, like you start on page 1, then maybe you go to page 2, but then you have a choice and you're going to page 87 or page 113 or something. Those are just examples. And it jumps back and forth as you make decisions in the story to make little stories. And I was really impressed with the amount of options in that Goosebumps book, because it's a whole series that R.L. Stine did for Choose Your Own Scare books, and it was a lot of fun. It was only like $2 on Amazon for the digital copy. I'd love to get the print copies for my nibblings, but I didn't put that in my list either, so I guess technically I've read 30 books then, but that one was a little weird to count just because I don't know that I read every single page, and you read it, I don't know. I spent only maybe like in 45 minutes to an hour with it, jumping back and forth, reading through a bunch of different pathways. I don't think that I hit every pathway, so I don't feel like I finished that book. So that's why I didn't want to mark it on my list, but I did technically read that one. Sorry, I've got the hiccups. After that, then I read for book club The Upside of Falling Down by Rebecca Crane. I just thought that one was okay. I gave that one 3 stars. it was another one like Yes Chef. Well, Yes Chef at least had some spice in it and some more interesting character work. Honestly, I kind of want to give The Upside of Falling Down a 2-star at this point, because it really wasn't, it was written perfectly fine, and I share my full thoughts on it in my book club video, but it was just, I don't know, I just found it disappointing and kind of boring. To be honest, it was just okay. But after that, I picked up 9 Goblins by T. Kingfisher. 9 Goblins was a really fun one. I actually read that with my nephew. Well, he was here, and he was really tired, and he was laying in my bed. So he was falling asleep off and on during the book, but he said he listened to it and he liked it. I don't know. I think he was sleeping through most of it though. But, you know, he got a kick out of that as well, which I thought was a lot of fun. It's a novella, so it's not a long story. I listened to it as an audiobook through Spotify, and it was just a really cute novella about a bunch of goblins that are in the middle of a war with humans and elves, and they find themselves on the enemy side unexpectedly after a wizard teleports them inadvertently, essentially. And they find a town that's been weirdly slaughtered, and they get blamed for it, and they have to find like the real culprit, essentially, so that they don't make the war worse at this point. It was really good, very interesting. I really enjoyed it. And I just really like T. Kingfisher's writing in general. I think she's a really good writer, especially when it comes to fantasy. She's so imaginative, and I really love the banter that she writes between characters. The dialogue is always so good, and so I was just really impressed with it. I gave that 5 stars. I loved it. Or no, sorry, I gave it 4 stars, not 5 stars. I think it's more like a 4.5 star. It's somewhere between 4 and 5 stars. The only reason I didn't give it 5 star, a perfect 5 star, is again, it felt like it was missing, passages at times. I think because she probably edited it down, I'm sure, to meet a certain page length, because it's not a very long book. It's only 160 pages. I mean, it's a novella, but it just felt like there was supposed to be a bit more, I think. And I will say that the novel doesn't feel disjointed at all. It doesn't feel necessarily like there are gaps. There's just, once you've finished and you're thinking back on your experience, then it starts feeling a little bit like, oh, I think I could have done with more here or more there. But I tend to feel that way about most novellas that I read, that if I end up loving it, then I'm always like, oh, I don't want to give it 5 stars because I just loved it and I wanted more of it. But this one did feel like maybe there was meant to be more and it was cut, but it's still really good at the end of the day. 4.5, 5 stars, 4 stars, somewhere in between there. Then I read probably one of my most favorite books this month. Absolutely loved this. I covered this in my book club reading blog as well, but The Very Definition of Love by Sophia Benoit. I loved that book so much. It was so good. It's one of those books that I was not expecting to enjoy as much as I did, but the lead character is a word nerd. She loves language. She loves learning new things as well. She's big on educating herself, even against what the norms of society dictate she should know. So when she gets into a relationship with this man, she ends up having to marry him after they were compromised at a ball. So they had to get married for propriety's sake, and he is a bit of a rake, but he has a lot of knowledge of like dirty words and things that she wants to know all about for her dictionary that she's putting together, which I thought was such a really cute concept. It was really adorable. I loved this book so much, and I just loved these characters so much too. I want more of this so badly. I just loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And then I read, Amazon has a couple of new short stories out for, they're calling it the Magic and Mystery Collection. It's like fantasy mysteries, essentially. And I read 2 of those. I read The Cairndale Orphan by J.M. Miro, which I really enjoyed. I gave that 4 stars. Again, that one felt like it was missing things. It's just a short story, so it's only like I think it was like 50, it's literally 50 pages. It just felt really short, but I really liked it at the end of it. And then I read also The Lion's Tusk by Robert Jackson Bennett, which is an Anna and Din story. So it's set in the Shadow of the Leviathan series, which A Trade of Blood is coming out soon, and I have the ARC. I also ordered it through Aardvark, so I'll have it on my shelves to go with the first 2 books here. Absolutely love that series so much. It's one of my favorite book series ever. So I love those characters. I gave that short story a 5 stars because it was fully complete, and maybe if I didn't know the characters as well, I would have rated it a bit lower, because I do have the history of these 2 and their relationship to each other as Anna is recounting a former mystery to Din, a former investigation to Din, which was so much fun to hear just Anna tell a story, and it was just a really good time. I enjoyed it so much. I also read Happy Hour by Gemma Amor, which is part of the VHS Killer series. They're all standalone stories. You don't have to read them in order, because I've also read Candy Cane Kills in that series. I read that last Christmas, really enjoyed it, and I keep meaning to pick up more from this series as well, because there's like 13 or 15 of them now, and they just all have really fun concepts for like a shorter novella type book. But this one wasn't too short. It was 224 pages. It was about so Happy Hour by Gemma Moore is about a bartender at this club in London who decides to start killing his patrons, essentially, for reasons, of course. But I don't know that I liked it too much. I gave it 4 stars because it was a fun horror story at the end of the day, but I don't know that I necessarily liked how the author wrote it. So it jumps back and forth with these flashbacks, but the present tense and the past sometimes too, they'll be in the middle of a thought or a sentence, and then it just cuts off and it goes and it jumps into a flashback, or it jumps back into the present day. I found it a little, it really just took me out of the story, to be honest. It was a little alarming to read every time it would jump to a new thought, a new scene. Even though they all intertwined, they were all telling the same story, essentially, because the flashbacks are all basically giving you a heads up on what the character's headspace is like and why it is the way it is, why he's doing these things to these people. But I don't know if it could have been done differently, in a better way, because it makes sense. It does make sense the way that Gemma Moore wrote it, but at the same time, I don't know, it felt like I was being like yanked back and forth, like it was very disconcerting to read it that way. And then I read my nonfiction book of the month, which is Paperback Crush, The Totally Radical History of 80s and 90s Teen Fiction by Gabrielle Moss. I listened to that audiobook on Spotify. It was only a few hours long. It wasn't very long. It's only 256 pages. And it was a lot of fun. It was, it didn't just cover, it says it's about books in the 80s and 90s, but they also covered a lot of the history of young adult and teen fiction. So they talk about books from like the 50s through the 70s, even some books from the 1800s that feature they don't have like long sections or anything, but she mentions them off and on as reference for where and why things became the way they became in the 80s for teen fiction. I also really liked the way it was organized. Each chapter was like a theme. So my favorite chapter was the one on jobs, where she talked about like teen detectives and babysitters and anything where that teen or that that preteen kid has a job of some kind. Camp counselors, lifeguards, those sorts of positions. And so that was a really fun chapter to read, because those were the books that I was most familiar with as well, like Nancy Drew and the Babysitter's Club were two series that I'm familiar enough with that I got a real kick out of reading that. I was surprised by how much I didn't recognize from these books. A lot of the books that they mentioned were a little maybe before my time, I guess. Though I was reading books from the 80s in my childhood in the 90s, and I was a kid in the 90s, so I read a lot of those books as well. But I don't know, I must have missed out on so many of these books, because so many of them she was talking about, and I was just like, I don't remember that. Wow, I feel like I missed out on something. But it was really fun. Oh, the final chapter as well was Terror, so they talked about obviously R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike and Lois Duncan. Those stories, which I read a bunch of those as well. So that one was a really fun chapter to talk about the rise of teen horror and middle grade horror, which was really fun. And then finally, my last book of the month, which I just finished the other day, Dead But Dreaming of Electric Sheep by Paul Tremblay. I picked this up on Aardvark. It is one of my Aardvark picks for July. So I'm happy I managed to read it this month. I did give this 4 stars at the end of it. I think it was just a little too weird for me, and I'm not sure I understood the ending. And so I didn't want to give it 5 stars. Also, I don't know that I like the story in this. I will say I love how this was written. It is so different. So it jumps back and forth. Every chapter is between Julia or you. And I'm going to give away I don't want to give away too much, but the you chapters can get a little experimental with how they're written. Like, for example, on this page, like there's a whole inset paragraph here. And on other pages, they'll read like redacted things. Like, it's so cool. And those are the you chapters. And who is you in this story? I don't want to give that away. You'll learn it pretty quick. You learn early on the you is, well, actually, is it though? Because that is a bit of a question as the book goes on. So no, I will not reveal that. The you is an interesting perspective. It doesn't mean you as the reader. It's referring to someone else, which is very interesting. But yeah, this book was so intriguing. It was one of the most different horror books that I've ever read. It is horror. It reminded me about, there's an SCP entry, I think it's SCP 93, if I remember right. I mentioned it in my review as well. But there are these color tests in SCP 93, and there's one specific one which is about these giant crawling gods that eat people or something like that. I'd have to reread it. But it gave me nightmares when I first read it, and I think I'm sure my nightmares have totally morphed the story at this point, so I should reread that SCP to actually remember precisely what happens. But my dream memory of that SCP is what this book felt like. It is so weird. It really is so unusual. And I recommend trying the audiobook for this as well. The audiobook was so cool. It was very different, very unique. It was, especially with the you chapters, they do some really fun audio production things in here with that. So I totally recommend, I recommend reading this and listening to it at the same time so that you don't get lost, because I will say that the reading it helped me understand the you chapters a bit better. The Julia chapters are a lot more straightforward. They're normal. But the you chapters are the different ones. Anyway, I loved that. This was a really successful July, I think. I loved most of the books that I read or reread in this month. Obviously, a lot of them were rereads. But I just had such a good time with so many of these, and it was so much fun rereading my favorite childhood books as well. I can't wait to do that for future videos, because I do plan on continuing that series, rereading my favorite middle school books, junior high books, high school books, and maybe my favorite college books. But we are at the end of the video. I've been talking for a really long time, and I didn't want to talk for this long, but this was a very brief look at the 28, maybe kind of almost 30 books that I read in July. Thank you so much if you stuck around to the end of the video, and I look forward to talking more books with you in the future. Bye!